Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'll do today, I will talk about um, if you're a developer, say a C Sharp developer or a Java developer or a C++ developer, and if you wanted to move to Salesforce, what are all the things you should know and what are all the differences you might see from a development perspective, right? That's exactly what I wanted to do. Um, One thing I just wanted to say that in my last episode, I talked about a generic video for people like, for instance, nurse or midwife or um, say a construction worker or anyone from a non-technology background wanted to get into Salesforce. What are the challenges they face, the things they should know, and how to go about it. So I will put the link in the description below. Um, so if you're interested, please check that out. Right. Uh, okay. So now you're a C# developer or a Java developer or a Python developer, and then you might have heard about Salesforce from somebody, right? Say, hey, the Salesforce is a great technology out there. People are getting paid, say 100K. Sorry, not 100K. 100K is pretty little for a senior developer. Let's say 150K. I'm talking from a New Zealand perspective, right? Please don't quote me from a United States perspective. I know that in America salaries are very different. So do in Australia. So I'm just talking purely from a New Zealand perspective, right? Say 150K for a senior developer, or say 160K for a senior, or 180K for a lead developer, right? So these are the salaries you often get when you're in Salesforce ecosystem. Now you might be thinking, I'm a C# developer, I'm making 140K. Can I move to 180K by getting to Salesforce? Now, if you're a developer, right, you will know very well, right? It's not about it's not about the syntax that matters, right? Because obviously, if you are a C# developer, you can easily move to Java. Or it's about the frameworks, right? The things you need to know from a framework standpoint, the libraries you need to know. The best way to solve a problem, right? Because there are different ways you can solve a problem, right? So, and if you are someone, say, who very much into design pattern like I am, you must be thinking, can I use the design pattern which I used in C Sharp, say, in in Salesforce? Yeah, you can, right? So that kind of questions you might be asking, you must be thinking, what is it anyways, right? Let me give it a try. And one thing I just wanted to mention that it's very easy for if you're a senior developer or an intermediate developer from a different technology to transition to Salesforce. I have done that when I was starting, when I was working on a different technology, so I migrated to Salesforce. It took me a week. It didn't took me much, and I was able to build an integration between a Salesforce, a Financial Force, and SAP in just a matter of 2 weeks. Yeah. So, I mean, if that's so, this video is for purely for developers' perspective. Now, uh, okay, so I sold you Kool-Aid. Now you must be thinking, that's great. So, what's the programming language, right? What is it in for a developer, right? So, in Salesforce, right? Salesforce is a SaaS product, like software as a service. So, which means you don't really need to install any software, um, in theory, right? Because for a development experience, you still need to install Visual Studio Code, which is the most popular used IDE for Salesforce development, and you need to install some of the extensions like CLI and other Salesforce stuff, right? Um, so once that's done, right, you're pretty much good to go with the development stuff. And the most important thing, you need to register for an org. And how to do that? I mentioned that in my previous episode. That's why I said, even if you're not a midwife, not a construction worker, I would highly encourage you to check that video first before you come to this one, because I talked in more details about different certifications where you can go about and trailhead and kind of stuff, right? So I'm gonna mention it anyways. So what do you do? So you go to developer.salesforce.com. You can go to browse trials, and once you do here, developer edition. Obviously, you're a developer, right? You think, oh, this is what I should be doing. Yeah, this is the one. But the thing is, right, in Salesforce, the developer edition is normally called as a free edition. So it doesn't matter. You have to be a developer. You can be a business analyst. You can be an architect. You can use the same trial work. Yeah. Once you do that, you're good to go. So you register that, and let's see, login.salesforce.com, and oh yeah, password is there. Um, I don't know if it's logged in. Okay, so this is what you get, right? And a lot of things in Salesforce looks. If you're from SAP background, if you're from different ERP system, you might think, or if you're from Dynamics, right, you might think, looks a little bit similar, a little bit different. Some of the concepts are similar, some of the concepts are different. Now, one thing you have to understand, right? The Salesforce sits on a you cannot have access to the database. Means you cannot go and like for instance, um, in if you're using SQL Server, right? And you can actually go and create a table, and you can delete a table. You know where the actual physical file sits, right? Um, that functionality is not there. Though you can create a table, you can delete a table. The tables are called objects in Salesforce. So because it's an object-based management system, so everything. So underneath, right? You don't have access to those underneath file because, like I said, it's a SaaS product, right? Here you have Object Manager, and you can see that all of these, some of them are standard object, means you cannot delete a standard object. This is a and uh, and one thing you have to remember that if you wanted to create your own table, so like these are called objects, right? Objects are equivalent to a table in SQL or SQL Server and Oracle, right? So and the fields are fields, right? Fields in the table, right? So account is a standard which comes with the Salesforce by default when you register or when you buy their certain edition like professional or enterprise or unlimited. And you can also create your own table, which is called as the custom table. So a custom object you can also create from spreadsheet. So everything the thing with the Salesforce, I just wanted to caution you guys, like in Salesforce, it's a little bit different to your C sharp background, or if you're coming from a .NET framework. Let's say if it's different to entity framework. I would say that, right? I mean, I know in entity framework you can use a lot of cool things, right? You can use the store procedures, and there is no concept of store procedures here. There is no concept of use here, right? There is no concept of um, CT tables. There is no such thing in Salesforce, and there's no concept of joins. There's no concept of, I mean, it is there, but it's in a bit convoluted format. So I just wanted to tell you main differences, right? So if you are someone who's very pro, the SQL guy like I was, right? I used to love SQL Server. I mean, it's one of my, I was very good in writing store procedures and fine tuning it. That was one of my favorite thing to do in the past. But in Salesforce, there's no such thing. So if that disappoints you, then yeah, then then perhaps Salesforce is not the one for you. Um, uh, but that being said, a lot of things the Salesforce takes care of, a lot of indexing behind the scene. You can fine tune a lot of things, right? You can write an optimized query. A lot of things are written in the code. Now you must be thinking, how do you write the SQL in the code? So in Salesforce, we call it as SOQL, SOQL, and instead of SQL. And the programming language, what you normally use is an Apex, right? So this is an Apex, which is like more like a server side. So think about from a front, full stack development, right? Full stack development, you have a backend developer, you have a front end, right? So Apex normally comes into the backend side of things, right? Where query a table, do a batch processing, run a server side processing, right? Automatic scripting, which we call as a batch processing, which runs at specific time in a bulk. Um, so So Apex comes in the picture. Apex is similar to Java. If you're from a C sharp background, you will find it quite similar. But that being said, this is a very I won't call it as a primitive, because then that will be a degradation of an Apex. Then you will be thinking why this guy is even convincing us to come to the Salesforce, right? Apex is not a full-blown language like C Sharp or Java. I'll be very upfront. Yes, you have object-oriented capability. You can do abstract classes. You can inheritance. You have all those capability. The things which you do not have at this stage, as of Jan 4th, 2024, you don't have generics. You don't have anonymous methods. You can't do any of this stuff, right? And if you're someone who is very passionate about generics, you can't do that. You have to use reflection to, fool around, you know, just to get by using a type. But that being said, it's fairly decent language. You can. It's not a dynamic language. It's not a scripting language, right? It is a proper object-oriented language. But that being said, the Salesforce is adding more and more functionality as they go along. But whatever we have at this stage is pretty good. It's pretty robust. You can write your own design patterns. I've launched a book recently. I'll put that link in the description below if you wanted to buy. I don't want to sell it, but as a marketing guy. But I'm just saying, if you wanted to buy it, you're most welcome to. So how to write a Salesforce Apex code in an efficient way using a design pattern. So you might find it useful, because I've used a lot of design patterns. I've used factory design pattern. I use facade design pattern in one of the projects I worked recently for a cancer screening. So yeah, you can do a lot of cool stuff, right? If you are someone who's interested into design pattern stuff, you can use it. And I'll put the link in the description below. If it's something interested, you can go about it. So this is from a server side, and the querying your table, right, usually happens. I'll show you just an example, right, how it works. So the way you can start the development. So if you don't have Visual Studio Code, don't worry about it. You can still do the development using a browser, uh, especially for an Apex perspective. So what do? You go here, right, and you go to Developer Console. Those Salesforce recommend you use an IDE, but if you wanted to troubleshoot, if you wanted to do some kind of things at the client place, you can use this, right? Okay, so this is how the code looks like, right? As you can see that, this is one of the, um, wait a second, I'll just show you. Okay, just see the test class. So this is how a Apex code looks like, yeah? So you have all the try catch and finally everything you have. And this is how, if you're familiar with Java, you might find it pretty similar, right? And a lot of things you can do that. Now, I spoke about how to retrieve uh, a value from a table, right? So it's very different to your usual way of writing um, the SQL query. Though in C Sharp you have something called link, right? If you're from a C Sharp background, you know what I'm talking about. So it's similar like link, right? So let's say I wanted to write, let's say this method, right? I wanted to get an account, right? So what do you do? So you do account. This is the type, right? Like your Boolean type, you have, um, sorry, not this one. So you have account, that's a type, and you see A, that's the name of a variable, equals to. So like you have Boolean type, you have integer type. So account is a type. It's a type associated with something called S object. An S object, because like, think about this way, right? It is not a typical RDBMS, right? Relationship database management system. It's not. It's an object based. So everything is inherited from an object called S object, and account is a type of it. So yeah. Now, if you wanted to retrieve a query, let's say select name from account. um, limit one, right? Now you can do that because this is how you retrieve, just an example, right? How to retrieve um, uh, a query, a value from an account object, right? So this is how you normally do that. And this is not a scripting language. See, when I do a change, right, you can see there is a asterisk. And if there's an error, it will, let's say, if I do something like this, right? Now, if I try to save it, it will give you an error. It's a compile time language, right? So it gives you an error. So you go here, you see missing identifier. So that's the line number 5. Oh, I made it. And also, one thing I just wanted to tell you that debugging is a little bit interesting here. It's if you are used to Visual Studio, then the debugging is absolutely shite in Salesforce. I know that you must be saying, hey, you're selling us a Salesforce, and at the same time you're saying debugging, because the reason why I'm saying you cannot just go and start say FY and F10, F11. You can't do that straight away. The way it works, if you wanted to debug, you can. There is something called integrated debugger. So how that works? First of all, you need to get a lot. So let's say you wanted to debug a process, right? So let's say you wanted to debug this class, right? Debug this method. So the way it works, right? So let's say a process X use this method to generate something, right? When you do that, a log file is generated. Yeah. So a process generates a log file. Now you need to grab that log file and upload the log file into Visual Studio Debugger, and you can debug that process. Yeah, because it's the thing is that it's hosted in the cloud. It's a cloud-based technology. So imagine if you allow everyone to debug it, and it's a multi-tenant architecture. Means you don't. It means so that the resources are shared. So everyone started to debug it, then it can slow down the entire system. So that's the reason why, right? So I hope that's clear. I mean, it's not to demotivate you, but I've been using Salesforce for a while, for a long time, right? I have no problem with that. I got used to it, and the thing is that, and it's a very cool technology. I mean, but that being said, right? I mean, if you think that it's not something I want, that's up to you, right? I'm not saying that if you're working on a cutting edge stuff on a .NET framework, then and if you think there's no need for it, then there's no need for it. I mean, just to give you an option, if you're interested, these are the things we have, right? I'm not selling you Kool-Aid here. I'm not saying that, hey, since just because Salesforce developers can make 180 doesn't mean that a .NET or Java developers won't make, right? It depends upon the kind of problem you're trying to solve. That's all it is. At the end of the day. Okay, now this is all from a back-end perspective, right? From a server side. Now, what about the client side? Do you have anything special, right? Yes, if you love JavaScript, then you will really love this technology called Lightning Web Component, where everything is component-based architecture. So you can use your JavaScript knowledge, you can hammer it, right? And it is a framework used for creating a modern user interface. Like for instance, you see, let me show you something, right? How it works. So let's say I will use it just to give you an example. So for instance, this quarterly performance, right? You can build it using that LWC. You can build a component and you can stick it here. Now, this is very simple how you can stick it here. You go here, you go to edit page, and every component you build, like I said, LWC Lightning Web Component is based on JavaScript framework. So, and you can go here and you can scroll down. There's something called custom. So you can drag and drop here the component. That's all it is. It will take care of it. Yep. And you need to know HTML. You need to know JavaScript if you're, and you need to know Jest for writing the testing aspect of it, right? And it supports ECMAScript 6 and you could write classes, arrow functions, all kind of stuff you can do. So I mean, I'm pretty sure even in if you're in, I'm not from a Java background. That's why you might hear me talking more from a C sharp perspective. I've been a C sharp developer for a while, for a long time. I mean, I've done Java. No, sorry, my apologies, not Java. I've done C, C++, Delphi, C sharp, and Python. And now these days I'm getting my hands dirty with Julia because I do like to do AI stuff. But sorry, anyways, I digress. So this is one thing you can build if you are someone who's very passionate about JavaScript, wanted to use the design patterns of JavaScript, you can very well use it. There is another framework which is called Aura, which is a legacy one, which is similar like it, but let's not worry about it. So from a developer perspective, right, you got a pretty good opportunity. And one thing I just wanted to mention in Salesforce. Salesforce is, one of the biggest mistake I've seen. Even I've done that mistake, right? People coming into Salesforce, they think everything is code, code, code. It's not the case. Salesforce is not about code. It's about most of the things are point and click, means drag and drop. You don't really have to write a flow. A lot of automation you can do with the flows. So I'll tell you what that is. Say, you don't have to write a lot of things using code. You can write the flows. But the thing with the flows is the performance, right? Sometimes if you wanted to do a batch processing, a point and click approach may not be sufficient. So when you're coming to Salesforce ecosystem, one of the things I would advise every developer, you need to understand when to write code and when not to write code. That's the most critical part when it comes to the Salesforce ecosystem. Because when I first moved into Salesforce, I thought, oh, it's all about writing code. It's not. It's not about writing code at all the time, right? It's about understanding when you can write out of box functionality. Sorry, when you can use out of box functionality and when you can write code. So let me show you. So you go to setup here, right? Um, so there's something called flows, right, which is pretty cool. Now flows are like you can do a lot of automation. So it's like writing a code, but in the form of a drag and drop. Have you played this game? What's it called? Scratch. Look at the Scratch game, right? So flows are exactly like Scratch. So if I do, let's say there are different flows. Like if you wanted to build a form, you can do pretty much like a form, right? So if let's say, hey, I wanted to build a screen, and let's say I wanted to say text box, capture, yeah, name, enter your name. Just give you an example, right? The one thing, since most of the developers who comes to Salesforce should not have much difficulty because you're already from a tech background. Usually, Salesforce is overwhelming for somebody who's not from a technology background. But for a developer, the only thing that might put people off is the debugging experience. And if they are someone extremely passionate about writing code, they might get bored using Salesforce. That's the only thing I would say. Enter your name. I'm just doing a bloody stupid screen, right? Okay, and then I save it and I'll say test flow. Just to show you how easy to build a screen, right? Yeah, and then I say activate. Okay, now let's say I wanted to use this flow, right? What I built somewhere else. Here, for instance. How do I do that? You go here, edit page, whatever the name I called. You could just put a flow component here somewhere. Yeah, and which flow you wanted to use. No, just for test. Oh no. Okay, so test flow. Yeah, save it. Activate it. Yeah, okay, assign a default logo. Just don't worry about it for now. Just wanted to show you how easy to use it. Yeah, enter your name, right? Uh, Yeah, simple, right? That's pretty much it. So this is how you can build. Like I said, right, in Salesforce, it's not just about writing code, right? You can do a lot of things without writing code. You could build this using your LWC as well. I mean, now you must be thinking, right? Just now you said you could do this using, but then why we're not using it? When do we use LWC? Is used when you have to deal with extremely complicated logic and a lot of complex structure. If you wanted to build like a data table, if you wanted to use, let's say, extracting, building a complex stuff, right? Then you use LWC. I mean, I'm using Lightning Web Component short form LWC. That's what we use. So I've built a lot of LWC in my career, and because some of the scenarios, like for instance, I build a scripting language to work on a platform. Okay, sorry. Let me take a step back. I built a scripting language on to work on something, right? And now I wanted to write a scripting parser, so I wrote the parser using it. If that's simple enough, right? So yeah, that's and okay. Now, one thing is not over yet. There are many things I wanted to talk about. So Salesforce developer, right? Um, So if you go to trailhead.salesforce.com, the Salesforce is driven by certification. You might see, people, taking developer certification, saying they're a developer from overnight, which is um, interesting, right? One of the, I mean, since I'm talking to developers, right, I can be pretty open about it. You guys know how the development works, right? Let's say you're a senior developer, you understand what it means to be a developer, right? You understand, lots of years of experience, somebody who are passionate about how to code, and also, uh, to know, where to go from A to Z. Now in Salesforce, we have this certification like a pyramid structure, what we call, right? In every pyramid, both side of pyramid, there is a certification called Platform Developer One, PD1, what we call, which expects you to know, um, what's it called, to have this one. There's a lot of development ones, but Platform Developer One, they expect you to have some foundation in Apex, some foundation in LWC. Um, you'll be surprised to know, right? I mean, I've seen a lot of people taking Platform Developer One and struggle to write a simple line of code, right? That's why, I find it very bizarre when people who no programming experience just take this PD1 and call themselves developer. That's one of the reasons why I really believe that a developer from a different technology will add so much value to the Salesforce ecosystem. That's why I always encourage people, hey, we wanted to make this ecosystem stronger. Guys, come in here and let's do a good work, right? I don't really want, functional guys, just, spamming up our ecosystem, adding tech debt to it over and over, because I'm really honestly sick of it, right? And people get so offended when you tell them, hey, you're not a developer, for goodness sake. Like I started programming when I was 10 on basic, right? Then I moved to C, C++. I freaking almost 17 years experience in programming area. And someone would just take a platform developer one, comes and say, hey, I'm a developer, is such an insult to programming profession. And the Salesforce is really notorious in saying, hey, our tool is low code, and that's even doing more damage. So that's why I said, if you're a developer, just come and see what do you think about it, and bring all your design pattern knowledge. We need this ecosystem to be strong, and having a strong technical base will ensure that will happen. So, okay, sorry I digress, but I think it's a very important conversation to have. Um, so this is the first certification I recommend after the Salesforce admin. So if you're from a developer perspective, right? Um, After Salesforce admin, now you must be thinking, what is Salesforce admin? So if you go to credentials back, so trailhead.salesforce.com, yeah, come to credentials, certifications. For a developer, right, from other technology, I would go ask you to go here and take this one, administrator first. This will give you a rundown about what we have in the Salesforce org. talks about different clouds because in Salesforce you have Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and flows. I explained you flows, right? And we used to have Process Builder that's expired. I mean, retired basically, I would say. And different things, how to create a company, how to create a user, everything it talks about in the certification. And I personally believe it's very important for a developer to have this cert. Once you get this cert, you will know, okay, these are the things which I shouldn't be doing with the code, right? For instance, creating an object, right? Creating an object like account, you should not be using code to do that because you can do that using point and click. I mean, you might be tempted, but that's not the right way to do it. So this certification will give you that. Where is it? Rundown. And once you do that, um, you know, go to certification here and go to developer one. So you come here. There are a lot of developer certification, but for a starting point, apart from developer one. So you go here and you just go through each modules and we'll teach you like basics, data modeling, formulas, in Salesforce formulas, as custom formulas you can write, right? So there's formulas like a scripting language. Then different kinds of flows, triggers. So like I said, right, it is an object-based database system, right? It's not an RDBMS. You might have heard about trigger, after insert, before insert. Yes, we have the same logic, but you do that using a code. So you write it using an Apex. Now we have frameworks that will help you write in an efficient way. And also you have to ensure that you have to write unit tests. It's mandatory, and your code coverage has to be minimum 75%. Without that, you cannot move your code to production. It will not let you deploy it. Yes, you can deploy because, and now also in Salesforce we have concept of sandbox, uh, where you can test it, and you have a production org, which is your final org. Now, in your final production org, you cannot modify your code, Apex code. You cannot modify it. You have to deploy it because that Salesforce did just to ensure that people don't go and fiddle with the production code, right? So the way it works, you do all your development. I'm just telling from a simple standpoint in a sandbox, right? And you move that code using your Git pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, whichever you used to, right? It could be an Azure, or it could be your GitHub or GitLab, right? Move to your middle sandbox, which is your testing environment, where the QA people will test it. And once that, then you run the pipeline to move your code to production, right? So that's how normally it's done. And having a DevOps, I mean, obviously, you guys, if you're using it doesn't matter if you have a Jenkins or Bitbucket experience, as long as you understand what DevOps is. It's pretty cool. And I trust if you are from a different programming background, you will have some understanding of the DevOps framework. So that's and from a certification perspective, it's $200 and 60 multiple choice questions. And Salesforce is driven very unfortunately by a certification market. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but the bad aspect is people have got obsessed to become a number game. Right? For instance, I often say this, right, and it's really frustrated me so much. So much. I've seen people taking architecture certification and they barely could solve a simple architecture problem, and it makes me question how the heck did you manage to get the certification in the first place, right? If you can't even solve, like for instance, we have certification. Um, let's take an example of this platform developer one, right? People take platform developer certification, and then when you ask you to do a tiny, bug fix, they struggle to do that. And I often wonder, how did you manage to get it? And they say, oh, we're not confident about. The thing is that Apex, there's an expectation, right? I teach this course for free. I'll put a link in the description below if you really wanted to learn for free. I mean, you can go through my playlist. I think there are 30 videos to get you certified, and I do a lot of things for free, anyways. and plus I run my own course for architecture. That's because I sell architecture course, and I don't and other course I try to make it free. Some of them not, right? That's just the way business model works. What I'm trying to say, right? Certifications are important. You will hear people saying, "Hey, we have 15 certification, 20 certification." That's all great, right? But then you look at the experience, 2 years experience and 20 cert. What the heck? How do you manage to get 20 certs in 2 years? Right? Like I got like almost 8 years experience in Salesforce, and before that I have almost 9 years experience in C Sharp, 17 years experience I have total. And plus other technology as well. Um, so I managed to get only 12 cert, not because I can't take it. I can go on a certification rampage and can take like every month too. But what's the point, right? I don't see any point in it unless if my project involves, like I do consulting for a government agency, so as an architect, if there is sort of area, like for instance, this year I'm really focusing on a technology called data cloud, um, which is a very cool technology in Salesforce. You might hear about it in Salesforce ecosystem, data cloud, data cloud, data cloud. Where you can bring the data from a different place. You can do data segmentation. Everything is about AI these days, right? People get obsessed with it, but anyways. So I'm just saying, right? Don't get overwhelmed when people say, "Hey, I got 20 certification." You must be thinking, "I don't even have one cert." It doesn't matter, right? I mean, start with one, then you have experience, right? You cannot beat experience. I tell people, right, I will hire somebody with no Salesforce experience, sorry, with no Salesforce certification, but with the right experience. I would hire a Java developer to work as a Salesforce developer, given the fact that person shows a right attitude to learn it, right? For me, it's not about certifications. Your certifications really don't make any difference to me. I get involved in a lot of interviews, right? Last year I was involved in interviewing senior developers, and this year I'm going to do the same. So the first thing I look at it, I don't care about the certification. I don't even ask them any certifications. It's good to have it if you have. For me, it's experience and the problem you try to solve, and the challenges you face, and how do you go about solving those. That's more important to me, right? Because remember this: you're here to add value to a business, and if you do not know how to add a value, then you add no value to a business, any business. That's the way I look at it. You are a programmer. Your value depends upon the business value you bring using your technical skills. And of course, your leadership skills and your right attitude and willingness to help others and mentor others. That's all matters, right? That's a personality trait. I often look at it. But the main thing, the main responsibility is to add business value to an organization you are associated with using your technical skills, right? Why do you think Google pays 400K, 500K, sometimes $1 million to a right candidate? Because the business value they can bring, right? So that's all I wanted to say, right? So this is for. I hope you find this video informative. I didn't make this video to demotivate you because I wanted to make sure that I tell you the right information, right? It's just because I work in Salesforce, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I don't have a reputation of sugarcoating anything on this in this world. I tell people straight away in the face, right? That's the way I work. So, like I said, you can do a lot of things with Apex, but there are limitations. You can do a lot of things with LWC, way more than Apex you can do, but both are different technology and different use cases. One is for server processing, one is for front end, right? So if this is something excites you, I would highly encourage you to check it out and see how we go. I'm not gonna say that, hey, come to the Salesforce because you get paid more. That should not be the right reason to change the technology. You should be changing a technology because of the value you can bring, and if you really find this tool interesting, right? That's all I can say. If you find Salesforce interesting, if you think you can add value to it, uh, you are something you can. And if you, or another reason I would say, if you think you're bored with your current tech stack, and you think you wanted to change, then welcome to our world. We can offer a lot of different things, And there's a big ecosystem. And yeah, come and join us and be a part of a family. And and it's always good to have people from different tech stack. And even if you're not a developer, if you're a consultant who's been, say, SAP guy, please come and join us, and be a part of our ecosystem. That's how I often say, right? And see what you can do. So that being said, I hope you find this session informative. And if you have any questions or any concerns, or you think that I talk too much of shite for half an hour, just do let me know. And as usual, thank you very much for your time. Hope you have a amazing day. Adios.